The first time I noticed her, she wasn't even trying. I was leaning against the chipped wooden railing of the apartment balcony, phone dangling uselessly in my hand, when she walked past. Mid-40s, her hair catching the fading sunlight like fire. She moved with a kind of quiet confidence I couldn't name, and yet, somehow, her eyes found mine, and held. That brief lock of attention made my chest tighten in a way that made no sense. I know what people say about older women. About what's appropriate. But standing there, I wasn't thinking about rules. I was thinking about the gentle curve of her smile, the way her fingers brushed the rim of her coffee cup absent-mindedly, and the flicker of something unspoken in her glance. I'm 22. I should have known better. I should have looked away. But I didn't. Hey! I heard her say the next evening, voice lighter than I expected. She leaned against my doorframe, casually, as if she belonged there. You're staring again. I laughed, a little too loudly, and stepped aside, though my hands lingered on the edge of the door. I wasn't staring. Her eyes sparkled with that half-mocking, half-curious look that made me feel like a kid caught stealing cookies, and like I deserved to be. There was warmth in her face, a softness that didn't hide the life she'd lived, the heartbreaks, the late nights, the mistakes no one talks about, but also a daring edge that made my pulse thrum. You've got to admit, she teased, leaning closer until the subtle scent of her perfume brushed my senses. I caught you. I swallowed, aware of how my stomach had tightened, aware that my words were getting tangled in my throat. I wasn't used to women like her noticing me. Women like her noticing me in this way. We talked, or at least I tried. She asked questions, lightly, almost casually, about school, about my job, about things I pretended mattered more than they did. Every now and then, her fingers would brush mine when she reached for a cup, a book, or a stray paper on the table. Every time, it sparked that electric, undeniable friction. I wanted to ask her to stay. To forget the world outside my tiny apartment, and just be there. But the words never came out. And maybe that was for the best. Then her sister appeared. Not the dramatic way you'd expect, but with a quiet grin, leaning casually in the doorway. Are you gonna let me in? She said, that soft, teasing lilt that made my heart skip. Her eyes flicked toward her sister, my mysterious, radiant neighbor, before returning to me, and suddenly the air was thick with something I couldn't name. A laugh that wasn't mine escaped me. My fingers tightened on the doorframe, heart hammering. I realized, maybe too late, that I hadn't noticed how close we were standing. That the room felt smaller, warmer, alive in a way I hadn't prepared for. And then, just as the tension threatened to snap, the doorbell rang. Sharp, insistent, and entirely wrong for this quiet, suspended moment. She glanced at me, her lips parted in a half-smile, half-question. That look, half-invitation, half-warning, made my chest ache. I didn't know what was coming next. I didn't know if I could handle it. But I knew one thing for certain. I didn't want to look away. The doorbell's chime lingered in my ears long after she and her sister had moved aside, leaving me standing in the doorway, frozen. I didn't move to answer it, not yet. Instead, I watched her, the older woman, as she leaned against the wall, casually brushing a strand of hair behind her ear, and I wondered why she had chosen to live just a few floors above me. Her name was Marianne. She wasn't the type of woman to flaunt attention. Everything about her suggested someone who'd learned early to keep her life private. I'd seen the lines around her eyes, the faint tremor in her hand when she thought no one was watching. I guessed those were the traces of heartbreak she'd survived, of relationships that didn't last, of moments she regretted but carried like invisible luggage. And me? I was barely 22, still raw from my first serious heartbreak, the kind that leaves you flinching at certain songs or scents. She had a gravity I hadn't felt from anyone before, the way she made me aware of my own fumbling inexperience without making me feel small. That, and the thrill of knowing she could destroy me with a single glance kept me both terrified and fascinated. I had no right to want her. Not just because of the years stacked between us, but because of everything her life implied. I imagined her in long-ago apartments, maybe waiting for someone who never arrived, someone who broke promises she never forgot. And now she was here, smiling at me like she'd found something worth noticing, and I couldn't tell whether it was courage or carelessness. "You okay?" she asked softly, breaking my train of thought. Her voice carried no judgment, only curiosity, a dangerous, tender kind. "Yeah," I lied, running a hand through my hair. My chest ached, and I knew she could feel it, because her eyes flicked to my fingers, lingering just long enough. There was a hush in the apartment, the kind that lets every little sound feel amplified, the fridge humming, the ticking of a wall clock, the faint scrape of her sister's shifting in the hallway. It was intimate and excruciating. I wanted to reach for her, to brush a stray lock of hair from her face, but I didn't. She shifted closer anyway, just slightly, as if reading the hesitation in my movements. Her hand brushed against mine, a feather-light touch that sent a jolt up my arm. I swallowed, my mind racing. I wanted to pull away, to rationalize this. It was reckless. I was young. She was complicated. And yet I couldn't. "You remind me," she said quietly, almost to herself, "of a summer I spent on the coast years ago. Just waiting for something." Her gaze met mine, and for a moment, the world narrowed. I imagined the salt air, the endless waves, and for the first time, I felt like she was letting me see the hidden corners of her life. Something unspoken passed between us, heavier than words. It wasn't just curiosity. It wasn't just attraction. It was recognition, a mutual acknowledgement of loneliness, mistakes, longing. And in that pause, that almost touch, I realized I didn't want the world to intrude, not tonight, not when it felt this fragile and alive. Her hand lingered near mine, a subtle dare, a question without words. I couldn't answer, not yet, but I knew I would try. The next morning, sunlight poured through the blinds, cutting stripes across the living room floor. I hadn't slept well. My mind replayed Marianne's hand brushing mine, her eyes holding mine a second too long. The thought made my stomach knot. I told myself it was wrong, dangerous even, but every time I tried to push it away, it only grew stronger. Then came the knock. Sharp. Familiar. My roommate, Mark, barged in without waiting for an answer. "Dude," he said, glancing at the doorframe behind me where Marianne had lingered just yesterday. "You've been acting weird. Like distracted. Spill it." I shook my head, forcing a laugh I didn't feel. "Nothing. Just tired." Mark didn't buy it. His eyes lingered, sharp, probing, and I realized how exposed I was, my thoughts, my confusion, the forbidden pull of her. And that's when I heard it, Marianne's soft laugh, from the hallway. She was here again. Just leaning against my doorframe, casual, but the air between us felt charged, brittle with something neither of us wanted to name aloud. "Hey," she said, voice low, teasing. "Am I interrupting something?" I shook my head. My pulse thrummed so loudly, I was sure she could hear it. Mark cleared his throat, awkward. "Right. Coffee?" He stepped out before things got worse, but not before shooting me a look that said he knew something was off. I sank against the wall, watching Marianne. She stepped closer, and my mind screamed caution. This was insane. 22, a woman twice my age, a connection we weren't supposed to explore. And yet, every fiber of me wanted it. "Do you ever think," she asked, almost shyly, "about the things we shouldn't?" Her words were light, almost teasing, but the weight behind them was unbearable. I opened my mouth to answer, but no words came out. Instead, my fingers brushed hers again, just barely, but enough to make her inhale sharply. We froze. Time stretched. Her eyes held mine, and for a second, I imagined leaning in, closing the distance, ignoring the rules, ignoring the world. Her lips were so close, her warmth seeping through the space between us, and my entire body urged me forward. And then the phone buzzed. My heart sank before I saw the message. Mark's group chat. "She's here, right? Don't do anything stupid." A laugh, tense and short, escaped her. "Oh." She stepped back, shaking her head as if to dismiss the moment. "Maybe that's for the best." Her hand lingered at the doorframe as she left, a ghost of a touch that burned into my skin. I watched her walk away, every step echoing in my chest. Guilt, longing, and desire collided in a mess I couldn't untangle. And just as I thought I could breathe, hear the apartment settle again, a knock sounded, this time on her door. I didn't know who it was, and I didn't want to. But the tension stretched, unbearable, a quiet promise that nothing would stay simple for long. The apartment felt smaller than ever that evening. Shadows stretched long across the walls as Marianne and I sat on opposite sides of the couch, either daring to close the distance. I kept glancing at her, trying to read her expression, trying to catch some hint of what she felt, but she was a master at hiding it. Or maybe I was just too desperate to see anything beyond what I wanted. I couldn't stop thinking about her sister. The teasing, that half smile, the way she leaned just close enough to remind me how close I could get. It made a burn spread through me I couldn't name. Was it jealousy? Desire? Both? My hands itched to touch Marianne, to stake a claim that I had no right to. "You've been quiet," she said suddenly, voice soft but sharp enough to cut through my spiraling thoughts. She was watching me closely, the faintest crease between her brows betraying concern. Or maybe curiosity. I hesitated, fumbling for words. "I just didn't want to mess this up." Her lips curved, half amused, half sad. "Mess what up?" I looked away, heart hammering. "Everything." She leaned forward, closing the distance ever so slightly. The air between us shimmered, charged, electric. My fingers twitched. I wanted to reach for her. But I didn't. I couldn't. Not yet. "You think too much," she whispered, almost a reprimand, almost a confession. "Sometimes you have to feel it." I swallowed hard, the words hitting me like a warning and a promise all at once. I wanted to feel it. I wanted to throw caution to the wind. But the rules, the unspoken ones, the ones society built around age, experience, propriety, they screamed at me to stop. And yet when her hand brushed my knee, just a casual, accidental touch, I felt every nerve in my body ignite. I leaned in, almost without thinking, eyes flicking to hers, searching for permission, for a spark. She didn't pull away. She let it linger, let the tension thrum between us, and I realized I was on the edge of losing control. "I shouldn't," I started, my voice breaking. "Shouldn't what?" Her voice was calm, teasing even, but there was fire in her eyes. Fire I wanted to dive into, even if it burned me. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A text. Not from Mark this time. From her. "I'm not supposed to be here. But I want to be." The words hit me like a punch. Desire, guilt, excitement, everything collided, leaving me dizzy. I wanted to move closer. I wanted to kiss her. I wanted to tear down the walls we built around ourselves. And then, just as my hand inched toward hers, as my chest pressed forward, as the world narrowed to her lips and her eyes, the knock came. Louder this time. Insistent. We froze. The moment shattered. My heart thumped painfully in my chest. She glanced at me, wide-eyed, a flicker of panic crossing her face. I knew instantly that whatever happened next would change everything. There would be no turning back. The knock at the door had shattered everything. Marianne and I froze, the electricity between us replaced by tension so thick I could almost taste it. I swallowed, hand still hovering near hers, heart hammering. She gave me a look, a silent question, and for a moment I wanted to tell her to run, to disappear, to forget the rules we'd been tiptoeing around. The door opened, and I blinked. It wasn't Mark. It wasn't a neighbor. It was her husband, or ex-husband, I realized too late. The man who had never mentioned divorce until a few weeks ago, the man whose presence she'd skirted around in casual mentions, who now stood there with an expression that mixed suspicion, hurt, and barely contained anger. "Marianne?" His voice was calm, but the weight behind it made the room shrink. "I didn't think you'd be here." She stiffened, a flicker of panic crossing her face. I wanted to vanish. I wanted to shrink behind the couch, anywhere but here. But I couldn't move. My body felt nailed in place by the guilt, the desire, the impossibility of it all. I wasn't expecting anyone," she said, voice catching. Her hand trembled slightly, brushing against mine, but we both knew it was more than that. He stepped inside, scanning the room. Then his eyes locked on me. And I saw it, a suspicion, a sharp calculation that made my stomach drop. "Who's this?" he asked, voice steady but edged with something dangerous. Marianne's gaze flicked to me, torn between protection and honesty. I could see the weight of choices she hadn't wanted to make pressing down on her. He's just a friend," she said, but the hesitation made it clear she wasn't lying to him. She was lying to protect me from the fallout. A flash of anger passed through her husband's eyes, sharp, explosive. "Friend? At this hour? Alone?" His words were more accusation than question. I could feel my chest tighten. I wanted to disappear, wanted to deny, wanted to claim anything, but instead I just stood there, helpless, my fingers brushing hers again without thinking. Marianne caught it, a flicker of reassurance in her eyes. But the tension had shifted. What had been dangerous and thrilling was now dangerous and exposed. "You're hiding something," he said finally, and his gaze burned into hers. "And I don't know if I can trust you anymore." Marianne's lips parted, but no words came. I felt the weight of her secret pressing down, and suddenly the connection we built, the small, fragile moments of closeness, the electric touches, felt fragile as glass. One wrong move, one word, and it could all shatter. I wanted to speak, to tell him nothing was happening, to defend her and myself, but every syllable felt like it could ignite a firestorm. All I could do was look at her, feel the heat of her hand against mine, and know that the next choice we made would define everything. Her eyes met mine. Not with panic, not with fear, but with something urgent and unspoken. "Decide. Do we risk it, or do we let it go?" And in that heartbeat I realized there was no turning back. The apartment felt smaller than ever. Every heartbeat, every shallow breath, echoed in the space between us. Marianne's husband, or ex, I still wasn't sure, had left the room, slamming the door softly behind him, but the tension lingered, thick as fog. We didn't speak immediately. I finally swallowed the lump in my throat. I can't do this anymore," I said, voice raw. "I can't pretend I don't feel something for you. I know it's crazy. I know it's wrong in every way people would say, but I can't stop thinking about you." Her eyes softened, a flicker of something vulnerable surfacing beneath the guarded, careful exterior she usually wore. She shifted closer, until the faint warmth of her body brushed mine. I could feel her pulse, hear it, sync with it, and it scared me how natural it felt to lean toward her, even though the world told me not to. "You have no idea how long I've waited to hear that," she whispered. Her fingers brushed against my cheek, tentative but insistent, tracing a line that burned my skin. I thought it was too late. I thought I'd ruined my chances with someone like you." I shook my head, pressing my forehead against hers. "You didn't ruin anything. You just made me want more." Her lips hovered near mine, close enough that I could feel her breath, the warmth of her skin, the impossibility of it all. Desire, fear, guilt, they all tangled together in a knot I couldn't untangle. I wanted to close the gap, to kiss her, to erase the months of hesitation and longing in one desperate motion. I shouldn't. She started, but her voice cracked. I caught the edge of a tear forming, and my chest ached. You should, I said firmly. You should do what you want. Not what anyone else says. Not what's safe. Just this. We sat in silence, the apartment holding its breath with us. The world outside existed, but only as a murmur. All that mattered was her hand in mine, the tremor in her lips, the electricity that refused to be ignored. And then, just as my fingers tightened around hers, the phone buzzed again. A message. I didn't look. I didn't want to know. The moment was ours, fragile and fleeting, and nothing could touch it, not yet. We stayed that way, suspended on the edge of something irreversible, eyes locked, hearts racing, breaths shallow. No words, no promises, just recognition. We both knew the risk, the taboo, the complexity. And yet we also knew we couldn't let it go, not without losing something vital. For the first time, we allowed ourselves to exist fully in that moment. And then, as if the universe was testing us, a shadow fell across the doorway, a faint silhouette against the light, leaving everything unresolved, every choice hanging in the balance. Whatever came next, we knew one truth. We had found each other, messy and impossible as it was. The shadow at the doorway was just a delivery person, pizza, of all things, but it broke the tension enough for us to laugh quietly, the sound soft and tentative but real. Marian leaned back, still holding my hand, and I realized how much I'd been holding my breath. It's absurd, she said, voice low, a smile tugging at her lips. All of this, us, the timing, the chaos. I know, I said. But it doesn't feel absurd when I'm here with you. It feels right. Somehow. Her eyes softened, the guarded wall she usually wore dissolving just enough for me to see her fully. I was scared, she admitted. I thought it was impossible. That I'd mess it up. That you'd realize I was too much. You're not too much, I said firm. You're everything I've been waiting for without knowing it. My fingers brushed her cheek, then her lips, close enough to feel the warmth but careful, reverent. She leaned in, finally, a whisper of a movement that erased all hesitation. I didn't think we'd get here, she murmured. We're here, I said. And we'll figure out the rest, together. The apartment, small and ordinary, felt like a sanctuary. The months of longing, hesitation, near misses, and secrets had all led to this fragile, perfect moment. We didn't need perfection. We just needed each other, messy and complicated as we were. We laughed again softly, letting the sound fill the room. She rested her head on my shoulder, and I felt her sigh, a quiet release of all the tension, all the fear. The world outside could wait. We had claimed this moment, and it was ours. We didn't know what tomorrow would bring. There were challenges ahead, the judgments, the whispers, the doubts, but for the first time, none of that mattered as much as the truth between us. We had chosen each other. Her hand found mine again, tighter this time. I'm glad, she whispered. I think I've been waiting a long time for someone who could see me. You don't have to wait anymore, I said. I see you. All of you. And just like that, the fear, the taboo, the hesitation melted into something simple and human. Two people who had risked it all for the chance to be together. We leaned into each other, letting the ordinary apartment, the late afternoon light, the faint hum of the city become part of our story. No grand gestures. No perfect words. Just us, finally, fully, alive in a way that felt impossible before. It wasn't the end of everything, but it was the beginning of us. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?